right, well, I think we'll get started then. So I'm Caitlin Nardozzi, everyone. I'm the Americas Marketing Manager. Welcome to the Gruyter webinar for IP Registry. I just wanted to mention a few housekeeping notes. Please mute your microphone. To ask a question, please either raise your hand or put it into the chat. And we will be recording this webinar, so if you have any concerns, please let us know. And I will just be handing it over to Andrew.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I guess we got everybody west now. We did east this morning, and I think we had over 70 people on this morning, right, Katharina? Yep. Which was really wonderful. So thank you all very much for taking the time to join us. My name is Andrew Pitts, CEO and co-founder of PSI. And Debbie is on somewhere, who is our marketing manager, who's monitoring the chat and is going to let me know, along with Katharina, what kind of questions we have come up. So let's get cracking. Andrew Pitts, I have been in the publishing industry since the early 90s. I was with Blackwell's Information Services just before they were purchased by Sweats. Then I joined the American Chemical Society, where I worked for over 11 years as the International Sales Marketing Director. So some of you may know me from a previous life, negotiating countrywide licenses for the ACS. And it was during my time at ACS where we realized that IP addresses in our system, IP addresses held by publishers, was a mess. And we needed to do something about it. And what happened was I ended up leaving the ACS and creating PSI so that we could be an independent third party who could take data from publishers and analyze that data and pass the data back to publishers. And that's kind of how it started. The IP registry came along about 7 years ago, when we took some data from Wiley, Elsevier, Springer Nature, Taylor and Francis, the ACS, AIP, and some other societies, and we just looked at the country of Poland, and we realized that none of the 7 publishers had the same IP addresses for the same accounts. Everybody had different naming systems. There was no common identifier. And the IP addresses were a total and utter mess. I think in Poland we had over 60% error rate in the IP addresses that the publishers should have had. So the publishers were either giving too much access to other organizations, so other organizational IPs were sat on your account and they were getting access from your paid content. Or the other side of it is that when you had asked for new IP addresses to be added, they were not always added. And we certainly know that no publishers were ever deleting IP addresses. So we ended up with, I think one publisher had the same IP address range in Poland on 17 different organizations, and all 17 of them were getting one hit every time somebody read a PDF or a HTML. So that's how bad the situation was and still is for many publishers. Every time we take on a publisher from Highwire or some of the other platforms, we verify their IPs and we have to make wholesale changes. Literally about half of the IP addresses are either incorrect or they don't have enough. And we've been very successful about doing this. You've probably seen publishers like Rockefeller and Portland and Biochemical Society, company by people who they actually delete all the IP addresses they have in their system, and they take the IP addresses that we have. And they've all seen an increase in usage, and we've had no complaints so far. So I think what we're doing seems to be working. So that's a bit of the background. I'm just now going to start sharing my screen, and we'll kind of talk as we go along while I'm introducing you to the IP registry. Now, the first thing I want to talk about on the IP registry is security of your data. We take the security of data as the utmost priority. What you may or may not know about me and PSI is that we have also been instrumental in trying to stop Sci-Hub, well, the Russian government, from stealing credentials and hacking into library systems, which then gives them access to the universities, and they are constantly stealing intellectual property from universities. So that's something that I've written about a lot. You may have seen I've written articles in many newspapers all over the world about the threat of the Russian government and what they're doing in academia. So for that very reason, we have to be more secure than anybody else. So the IP registry is completely ring-fenced with a very secure system. We have been penetrated, tested by an ex-member of MI6 who could not get into the system, but gave us also some other improvements that we've done to make sure that we don't get intruded into. So your data is very secure. As for people who access the registry, so that is either yourselves, and you have access to your data, and the publishers have access to the data of their customers, it's IP address validation, and it's also then username and password. And any users that sign up for the IP registry, we vet as well to make sure that they are legitimate users of the IP registry. And what happens then is once people have registered for their organization or for their university, if any changes are made, emails are then sent to the registered users so that everybody is aware of what is happening to their account. So that's really the kind of security piece of it. Now, the next piece of it, I will log in as if I am a publisher. So you can see what the publisher sees of your information. So we'll use my favorite football club as an example. Liverpool, the librarian is also part of our library advisory group, so they don't mind us showing their data. But if you are a publisher, this is the data that you will see. So you can see the metadata that we have gathered. So we have an English standard name for everything. And I do apologize to everybody out there who's not English speaking, but kind of what we got from the publishers is that mostly their customer service units around the world are dealing in English. And we wanted to have a standard that we could use for matching. So we've given everybody an English standard name. We also have the local names as well. So we have all the German, French, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese. We have it all that you can search it if you like in Arabic, Chinese, whatever language you like. But we do have an English standard name for everybody. Then we have aliases and acronyms. We have our organizational identifier, and we have some metadata that tells us about your organization. And we also started adding now entity IDs and SAML information. But the most important thing for you to understand on this screen here is that you can see here only a date and timestamp. Publishers cannot see any personal information about you on the registry, okay? The only personal information we actually collect from you is the name and the email address of the registered user. And the only people that can see the name and the email address is PSI, in case we need to contact you, and you yourselves. We never share your personal information with any third parties. So we are very GDPR compliant, we're data protection compliant. And if you saw the licenses that every publisher has to sign to become a user of the registry, Katharina will tell you it's about 20 pages, and about 10 pages of that is about data protection and GDPR. So that's very, very important that we state that. Nobody can see any personal information. We never share any personal information. All we share is this. So the publisher view is the metadata and the IP addresses. That's it. That's what the publisher gets to see. That's what is important to them. So what I will do now is I'm going to sign out, and I will sign in as an organization. So I will sign in as a university. Now, Liverpool University, again, don't mind us sharing the name and the email address of their registered user, because they are happy for us to do that, just to show the difference. So this is the view that you will have as an organization. So you will be able to see the name and the email address of who has registered. What you will also be able to see is you can see a list of all of the publishers that will receive from us your IP address changes, and that's always listed on your account. What you can then see also is the IP addresses. So it's quite a different view to what the publishers have or anybody else that has it. You get to see a lot more information. Just a quick word while we're talking about data protection and security and everything like that. We are currently changing our terms and conditions. I must admit, I read through them, and you know, always when lawyers create terms and conditions, I think they get paid by the word, and they were far too stringent, and there was far too much in there that we realized that some universities would not be able to sign up to. So we have really taken the terms and conditions and made them much better for you to be able to adhere to and to sign up to. Now, if any of you are unable to click through terms and conditions, if you contact us, we will send you a copy of the terms and conditions as a license, and we can both sign them if you need to make any changes. But I would urge you all to take a look at the new terms and conditions, which should be ready in the next 48 hours. And I think you'll find that they're much more helpful. Let's put it that way. So I'll just take you back to the account that we have on here of University of Liverpool, and show you the most important pieces of it. And that is to manage your organizational details. So you can come in and you can make changes to some of the data. You can see here that we have places you can put Athens and license notes. Supported domains is quite important for us at the moment, just so we can verify access as well. And you can put in here affiliations. So you can see that Liverpool have an affiliation with the Marie Curie Palliative Care Institute in Liverpool. And you can actually put children. So if you want to create a hierarchy, you can add children to it. And I will come to hierarchy more in a moment. But you can put hierarchy in there. You can give us your ISNI ID. And we will have other places soon to put the ROR ID, which we are trying to work with. They're not quite ready yet, but we are trying to work with them. So that's kind of the organizational details that you can change. But most importantly is managing your IP address details. So if you come in to your IP addresses, it's very easy for you to verify your information. You can see here that you can confirm that what you have is correct. It's very easy for you to delete IP ranges that maybe are not correct. So you just click the red button and confirm, and you can delete those. What you will see from this piece here is that Liverpool University have 3 IPv4s. They also have an IPv6, and the IPv6s will also go across to Gruyter and to all of the public, well, and actually not all of the publishers, because not all of the publisher platforms yet accept IPv6, but because De Gruyter are working with 67 Bricks and LibLinks, they are able to accept all of IPv6 changes. Now you can notice that there is an IP address at the bottom in purple. This is the easy proxy IP address that we keep separately, and we mark it separately. And we do this for security reasons, because if universities are hacked into, it's generally their proxy server that gets hacked, or using stolen credentials, and we like to be able to advise the publishers separately. We are trying to stop publishers blocking proxy servers and contacting you as a university first if they detect that somebody is in your system. So that's one of the main reasons why we split out the easy proxy. The other reason is just in case there are publishers who are nervous about proxy access and they don't allow it, is that they can see very clearly that that is the proxy IP address. So what we will do is we'll quite simply add an IP address. And while we do this, we can tell you about some of the security measures and how we do some verification of IP addresses. So I'm going to attempt to put an IP address into the system. So it's as easy as that. When I click add on this, you will see that the system is going to shout at me. So you can see here that it's telling me you cannot add that IP address because this IP address already belongs to the University of Oxford. So you can't add in IP addresses into the system that may belong to one of the other 72,500 organizations for which we have IP address details. It will not let you do that. We'll just try one more. So if we go in here, okay, so we'll add in a range this time. And as we add into the range, there's lots of controls and checks that are going on in the background. So this one is saying, this is a foreign IP address. So, and it will shout at you. So when people make mistakes with IP addresses, they generally flip numbers around because you're adding long strings of numbers into systems. And that's what we want to avoid. That's where we see the biggest mistakes. And if you do that and you end up opening access up to somewhere else in the world, we have had publishers who've mistyped things and they've opened up 38 different universities in Thailand, for example, because they've put a huge range in for Thailand. It won't let you do that. It will also shout to you here that this IP address exists for multiple organizations because it is, this is actually some easy proxy addresses that belong to lots of different customers. So there's lots of controls and checks that go on in the background that we do before it even comes to us and we look at it. So but that is how easy it is to add and delete and to verify your IP addresses. That's very important. Now, just taking you back to the list of publishers. So on the list of publishers here, you may wonder how the changes that you make, so any additions or deletions that you make, get to the publishers. Some publishers, I would say probably about a third of the publishers right now, have what we call an API. De Gruyter have an API that's been built by LibLinks, and that will be switched on, I think, in about a couple of weeks. Any updates that you make, De Gruyter will receive them within 2 hours because their API is calling to us every 2 hours. So it's a maximum of 2 hours you have to wait for De Gruyter to get any updates on your IP addresses. The other publishers receive from us something that we call a daily digest. So every day they get a list of their customers that have had either additions or deletions with their organizational details so that it's very easy for them to go into their system and plug it in. We're slowly moving everybody over onto the API, but some people are quicker than others on platforms, and some people aren't quite ready yet for the API. But I would say for the email ones, it will take up to 24 hours, maybe maximum 48 hours, depending on where in the world you are and where in the world the publisher is, for those changes to be made. So that's how the data goes through to the publishers. And the publishers will accept our additions and our deletions. Now, in the last demo, somebody asked about the potential that you may have slightly different licenses with different publishers. So I'm going to show you how we deal with that now. So we're going to log in to Cornell University, who is a partner organization of ours. They have been writing to every single publisher that they have a license with and trying to persuade them to join the IP registry. We have many universities that have been doing that because they see the real potential in this. Cornell had to change their easy proxy, and they had to change, I think it was something like 1,100 publishers they had to advise of the new IP address, and it takes a long time. We know that the University of Melbourne that did it, it took their library team 6 weeks to advise everybody of a new easy proxy IP address. And this will help because this will be sent to all of those publishers and it will save much time and it's much more secure. So that's the idea of how it helps you. So let's look at Cornell. So if you got to here on hierarchy, now you can create this, but what I would suggest for the first time of using the IP registry, please email us and tell us exactly how you would like the structure of your university or your organization to be seen by publishers. And we will help you set the hierarchy up with all the correct IP addresses for each piece of the hierarchy. And then we will then say to you, okay, you go and verify it and make sure it's all correct. So we're happy to do all the work for you. So what I have on my screen now is Cornell. So Cornell University, probably about 90% of their licenses, they have the full site license with a publisher, especially the larger ones like, you know, Elsevier, Taylor & Francis, Springer Nature. But for some of the more niche ones, what they may do is they may, for a medical publisher, just want to restrict access to Weill Cornell Medicine. So you can see Weill Cornell Medicine also has its own hierarchy of the Weill Cornell Medicine Center in Qatar as well. So if we go down the screen, you can see that these are the IP addresses for that part of Cornell University, Weill Cornell Medicine. And each part of the hierarchy has a different organizational identifier. So if, for example, de Gruyter only had the medicine side of Cornell, we would map their customer name and ID to Weill Cornell Medical only. And that means they would only receive updates from the medical part of Cornell. They would not receive the rest. So if we come back up to here, you can see that they also have an Ithaca campus, which is up in New York State, and that is more of humanities. So they may not have medical information. They may only want to restrict publishers to just the Ithaca campus. And potentially for Cornell Law School, they may only have, say, LexisNexis, the law database may only be for the law school, and that has its own separate IP address, and we can map it to that. But we can shape this and make this to be whatever you like, and we will help you do that. So that's kind of how easy the registry is. This is how easy it is for you to come in and register and confirm your IPs, and then from then on, if you make any changes, please make them here. A lot of publishers are working with us now, and some are shutting off the ability for you to make changes in their system because their systems are very old and clunky, and they can't accept IPv6, and they can't create the hierarchy system like we have. So they are basically outsourcing everything to us to make it more secure and easier for you as well. So that's why a lot of them are asking you now to please register and come on board. I just have one more note that came up this morning, is that the IP addresses that we hold are only organizational IP addresses, and organizational IP addresses are not considered personal data. This has been tested in the European courts. We don't hold any other databases. We don't have any log files. We don't hold any other data that would ever allow us to know if a person came in and was using an IP. We just don't have any other way of doing that, and we don't want to. So we only have organizational IPs. So the publisher only ever knows from an IP address that you are somebody from Cornell, or from Paris University 6, or from Liverpool University. We never have any personal data. So that really is the IP registry. I think I've kind of gone through everything. So it might be a chance now, I think, Katharina, to see if we have any questions, do you think?
Andrew, sorry, do you just want to talk people through how they can submit IPs when they've had an error message by giving supporting evidence?
Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. Debbie made a valid point. Okay, so if, for example, you're trying to add an easy proxy IP address and you are in Germany, that easy proxy IP address could either be from the US or from Holland. So the Netherlands, they have IP addresses from both places. What you would do then is you would come in and manage IP addresses, and you would add the IP address. And when you get the error message, all you have to do is click on supporting documentation, and you can either cut and paste an email in here to us, or just type a note to say, this is our easy proxy. And that will come through to what we have as a work queue here. And we will just verify that that is in fact an easy proxy IP, or it belongs to EBSCO or ProQuest or some other valid third-party service. And then we will make sure that that is then passed on to the publishers. So thank you for reminding me about that one, Debbie. So that's how that part works. Anything else from anybody?
There are currently no questions yet, but we were also looking at multiple users per institution this morning. If you could show.
Oh yes, that's a good idea. Thank you very much, Katharina. We did have a question this morning. It was broken into two parts, really. So somebody asked this morning, can we have multiple users on our account? And the answer to that question is absolutely yes. And you can see here that Cornell have, there's one at the top, 2, 3, 4, 5 different users. So you may wish to have somebody registered for the IP addresses for the law school, somebody registered for the IP addresses for medicine, or you may just have 3 or 4 different registered users. But as I said earlier, if any changes are made, all registered users receive an email to say, this IP address has been added, or this IP address has been deleted, just to make sure that you're all, what we say in the UK, on the same page. So that can happen. The other piece that was brought up this morning was about consortium. So we can, if you like, if you have a consortium and you have somebody from the consortium who is responsible for all IP address changes, we can register that person onto all of the universities as part of that consortium. Then they can make the changes on your behalf. We kind of prefer that we have somebody from the university, but if you do have a central place where you make changes for a consortium, we can handle that too, and we will register that person on all of the universities, as long as we get something from the universities to say that it's okay for that person to make changes. We will do that. So that's the two pieces of that question. Thank you, Katharina.
There's a question about costs and who pays for the service.
Who pays for the service? Good question. All the publishers. So by the end of the first quarter this year, we will have about 140, maybe 150 publishers that are using the system to try and make sure that all of your usage metrics are correct and that they have the correct IP addresses in their system. And we charge them an annual fee to be able to receive the updates from you. And that's how we do it. We did look into maybe charging a small amount for each organization, but when we quickly realized that we were probably going to get to about 119,000 organizations in the registry, it just wasn't feasible to try and be taking small amounts of money from lots of universities and organizations. So we just said, look, let's make it a free service, and hopefully then more people will use it. And if more people use it, everybody benefits from the system. So it's free, and we have no plans to charge universities or academic organizations at all for this.
There are currently no other questions, and I think we've covered everything that has been asked this morning and questions that we've received over the last few weeks.
But please take a look at the new terms and conditions. Please email us. I think, Katharina, you'll probably put up the email address, will you, for our customer service team. anytime, call us. We're happy to jump on a Zoom call with you personally as well, so we can work out your hierarchy and make sure that we have everything correct for you. So nothing's too small to ask, so please ask some questions. We do have videos that I believe Katharina has, and also Debbie can send you about how easy it is to register, how you can change IP addresses, and how you can manage organizational details in the registry. So I'll come off of share, and I might be able to see some more people, but
Great. I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Andrew and Kat.
Yeah, we'll stay on.
Oh,
We'll stay
there's
on.
one more
We'll
question.
stay on a little bit until all of the questions have been answered. But if you don't have any questions and you don't want to stay on, you can log off and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, just to answer that last question, we've been around for 7 years as the IP registry, but PSI has been around for 17 years.
It's a long time.
It's
and you still look very youthful.
Thank you very much, Katharina.
Well, you're welcome.
Well, thank you, everybody. It was really nice to be able to present to you all. So thank you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Wherever in the world you are, thank you.
Thank you.
And stay safe.